What if the silence you feared is the very place your soul is trying to return to? What if stillness isn't emptiness, but the language of the universe whispering back to you? And what if one of history's greatest emperors, burdened with power, surrounded by chaos, found his deepest peace not in victory but in stillness? Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, warrior, Stoic. In the roar of Roman politics and the violence of endless war, he carried something most leaders didn't: stillness. Not a weakness, not a lack of action, but a fierce, disciplined quiet that anchored him amid the storm. This video is not about history, it's about now. About how you, right now, can step out of the noise and into the kind of clarity that shaped an emperor. Marcus didn't just survive Rome, he ruled it from within, not by overpowering others, but by mastering himself. He wrote by candlelight, in military camps, in solitude. Words that were never meant to be published, but became one of the greatest works of philosophy in human history: meditations. These were not speeches, these were reminders, personal, painfully honest, and written. In moments of stillness that Marcus carved out for himself amidst the chaos, he knew the world would never be quiet. So he chose to be. Ask yourself, when was the last time you were truly still? Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We live in a world that worships speed, more, faster, louder. But Marcus? He trained his mind to slow down, to go inward, to reflect. He said, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." And that wasn't poetry, that was survival. Because in the high towers of Rome, Marcus faced betrayal, faced death, faced the weight of a crumbling empire. But in the quiet of his own soul, he found direction, strength, simplicity. And that's what he left for us: not commands, but questions; not formulas, but focus; not noise, but stillness. Stillness is not passive, it's not resignation. It's the most active kind of awareness. The kind that lets you hear what matters. The kind that lets you feel your breath, recognize your thoughts, and return to the present moment, over and over again. Marcus understood that nothing external could give lasting peace. Not wealth, not status, not even love. Only a mind aligned with nature, with reason, with virtue. Only a mind trained in stillness could stay whole in a world designed to break you. Imagine him, wrapped in armor, facing down barbarians, or seated in his chamber while Rome tore itself apart, and yet still writing, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Now pause. Think about that. Because most of our suffering doesn't come from the event. It comes from our resistance to it. The panic, the story, the spin. But in stillness, that story starts to unravel. In stillness, you realize, this moment is all there is. And you right now have everything you need to respond with courage, with clarity, with calm. Marcus wrote to remind himself, not to pretend he had it all figured out, but to stay anchored. He reminded himself that he was mortal, that time was short, that every breath could be his last, not to depress himself, but to sharpen his presence, to strip away distraction, to wake up. That's the power of stillness. It's not just peace, it's precision. And you don't need to be a philosopher to find it. You don't need to be a king. You need only one thing: the courage to sit with yourself, to sit in silence, to listen without judgment, to the mind that's been waiting for your attention. Because beneath all your noise, there is something solid, something still, something deeply, quietly strong, and Marcus knew that's where wisdom begins. You see, Marcus didn't have the luxury of peace around him. He ruled during plagues, he fought brutal wars, he made decisions that affected millions. And yet, through it all, he wrote, in the dim candlelight, with the sound of distant armies, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, he still returned to stillness, not because it was easy, but because it was essential. He knew the chaos outside was constant, that life would never slow down for him. So he slowed within. He slowed his thoughts. He watched his reactions. He practiced the ancient discipline of observing without judging, acting without rushing, feeling without drowning. That's what makes Marcus different. He didn't run from the noise. He walked through it, anchored. He didn't pretend pain didn't exist. He met it with presence. He didn't numb his emotions. He refined them through reason. He said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. What does that mean in our world? It means the stress, the fear, the anxiety you feel. Yes, they are real, but they are not rooted in the event itself. They are born in your mind's response to it. And that response can be reshaped, calmed, clarified, in stillness. This is why solitude wasn't terrifying for Marcus. It was necessary. Stillness gave him back his power. It reminded him that underneath the chaos, he was not just a ruler of land, he was a ruler of thought. And that was a deeper kind of empire, one no one could take from him. The truth is, most people fear silence because they've never learned how to listen to it. They think stillness means absence, that silence equals void. But Marcus knew better. Stillness is full of wisdom, full of patterns, full of space to choose your response instead of reacting blindly. And it doesn't happen by accident. He trained for it. He reminded himself every single day that the present moment, this very breath, was a gift. That life was slipping by. That death was always near. And instead of running from that truth, he used it. He let it sharpen his attention. He let it cut through the fog of distractions. Because when you realize you could die tomorrow, you start paying attention today. You listen more closely. You speak more kindly. You waste less energy on gossip, on jealousy, on trying to impress. You return to what matters, to what's real. And you only find that reality in stillness. Stillness is how Marcus made sense of a senseless world. It's how he kept his mind clean while ruling over corruption. It's how he found moral clarity when surrounded by political confusion. He didn't always know what the right action was, but he knew how to find it, by going inward, by pausing, by asking, what is the most virtuous thing I can do right now? And virtue, courage, justice, wisdom, self-control, that was his compass. It can be yours too. But only if you give yourself permission to stop running, to stop scrolling, to stop filling every second with noise. Because if you never face the quiet, you'll never meet the strongest version of yourself. The one who doesn't flinch under pressure, the one who doesn't chase the crowd, the one who walks their own path, not with arrogance, but with clarity. That's the magic of Marcus. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but he was steady. And that steadiness came from stillness. In one passage he writes, "To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands, unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." That's the Stoic life. Not a life without pain, but a life that isn't defined by pain. Not a life without storms, but a life with an anchor. Not a life without loneliness, but a life where you are never alone, because your own soul is enough company. Stillness doesn't mean isolation. Stillness means presence. Stillness means you are finally home. There's a misconception that stillness is about doing nothing. But for Marcus, stillness was deeply active. It required discipline, presence, a kind of spiritual muscle that had to be exercised daily. It wasn't passive. It was powerful. It was how he filtered the chaos of the empire through the clarity of a single trained mind. He often reminded himself that much of what we stress over is just noise, unnecessary, fleeting, inflated by ego and fear. He wrote, "You could leave. Life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Imagine living every day with that kind of awareness, not as a fear, but as a motivator, as a way to strip away the unimportant and get back to what actually matters. And what actually matters? Not the argument you had online, not the image you're trying to maintain, not the constant pursuit of more. What matters is who you are when no one is watching, how you respond when things go wrong, how you treat people who can do nothing for you, how you carry yourself, not for attention, but out of alignment with your values. These are the things that emerge in stillness. When you quiet the world, you hear your conscience, you hear the truth, and sometimes you hear your calling, because the quiet isn't empty, it's full of answers. Most of us live on autopilot, rushing, reacting, distracted, numb. But Marcus challenges us to slow down, to return to the breath, to reflect on what it means to be alive, to be human, to be temporary. He knew that we don't get to choose how long we live, but we do get to choose how deeply we live. And that depth, it starts in stillness. It starts when you stop long enough to feel your own thoughts, to question your own stories, to sit with your discomfort instead of running from it. And when you do, you begin to transform, not into someone new, but into someone more true. You remember that you are not your mistakes. You are not your achievements. You are not your reputation. You are the one watching all of that underneath, still steady. Marcus was never chasing legacy. He didn't write meditations for you or me or any audience. He wrote it for himself, to stay grounded, to stay focused. He was reminding himself that no matter what Rome threw at him, no matter what his enemies whispered, no matter what politics erupted, his stillness was his sanctuary. His journal was his temple. His mind was his home, and so can yours be. When the world gets loud, retreat inward, not to hide, but to recalibrate. When the world demands a reaction, choose reflection. When you feel like screaming, breathe. When everything feels urgent, ask, what is truly essential here? Because most of it isn't. Most of it fades. Most of it doesn't deserve your peace. That's what stillness gives you, the ability to choose what matters. And when you know what matters, you become unshakable. You move through the world differently. You listen instead of interrupt. You observe instead of judge. You speak slowly, you act deliberately, you become the calm in the room, not the chaos. And people feel it, even if they don't know how to name it. That's stillness, not flashy, but unforgettable. And Marcus lived it, not because he was perfect, but because he practiced, day after day, page after page. He embraced the stillness because it was the only way to survive the noise, and it still is, for you, for all of us. When you begin to embody stillness, you'll notice something remarkable. The things that used to trigger you don't hit as hard. The things that used to consume you start to lose their grip. You see through them. You no longer react out of fear, but respond out of principle. You no longer need to win the argument, because you've already won your own peace. Marcus knew that the battles outside were never as dangerous as the battles within. Ego, envy, desire, anger. These were the true enemies. And they don't announce themselves like soldiers. They creep in like whispers, quiet, persistent, unseen. That's why stillness matters. It gives you the space to notice those voices before they take root. He warned us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And what are your thoughts made of? What are you soaking in every day? Is it clarity, virtue, and truth? Or is it comparison, outrage, and distraction? Your soul is being shaped either way. Stillness lets you choose the shape, but stillness doesn't mean shutting the world out. It means opening yourself up to deeper awareness, to clarity over noise, to intention over impulse. It means showing up fully, even when the world around you is spinning. You become like the eye of the storm, calm, centered, awake. And this isn't about perfection. Marcus certainly wasn't perfect. He struggled, he doubted, he hurt. But what made him different was that he didn't run from it. He wrote through it, reflected on it, embraced it. He used pain as his teacher. He used stillness as his guide. And you can too. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to stop running from the silence, to sit with it, to let it teach you. Because the answers you seek are not in another book, another post, another opinion. They are waiting in the quiet. In that sacred, undistracted moment where you finally say, enough. I will stop chasing. I will start listening. You begin to realize you don't need as much as you thought. Not as much attention. Not as much approval. Not as many things. You start to simplify. Not because life is less, but because it's finally rich with meaning. Marcus didn't need applause to feel valuable. He didn't need possessions to feel complete. He knew that true wealth was in clarity, in virtue, in character. And he found all of that, not on a battlefield, but in stillness. So what might stillness give you? Maybe it gives you the courage to walk away from something that's been hurting you. Maybe it shows you that you are already enough. Maybe it teaches you how to grieve, how to forgive, how to begin again. Whatever it is, I promise you this: it won't scream, it won't rush, it won't demand your attention. It will whisper, and if you're quiet enough, you'll hear it. That's why this message from Marcus matters today more than ever. In a time where silence feels threatening and speed is mistaken for success, we need this wisdom. We need the reminder that peace isn't out there, it's in here. That strength isn't loud, it's consistent. That happiness doesn't come from what we add, but from what we let go. You don't need more to become more, you need stillness to remember what you already are. So many people spend their lives searching for peace in all the wrong places, in promotions, in relationships, in distractions. But Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most powerful empire on earth, found it not in palaces or parades, but in stillness. In that quiet place where he could hear the truth beneath the noise, he realized something most of us forget. The world will never stop spinning. There will always be demands, problems, criticisms, expectations, but none of that determines who you are, unless you let it. You have the power to respond instead of react, to reflect instead of regret, to slow down instead of speeding past. Your life, that's what Marcus practiced. That's what he left us, not a list of rules, not a system of belief, but a lived example, an invitation to reclaim your mind, to reclaim your breath, to reclaim your presence, and that starts with you, right now, not in a monastery, not on a retreat, but in your everyday life, with a single breath, a single pause, a single moment of stillness. The beauty of stillness is that it doesn't require anything, not money, not status, just willingness, just the courage to face yourself honestly, to sit without the noise, to meet whatever rises with grace. It's not always comfortable. In fact, at first it might be painful. Stillness has a way of exposing what you've buried, the fears, the grief, the unmet needs. But don't run, don't rush, just stay, listen, breathe, be with it. Because this is where healing begins. In one of the most profound lines in Meditations, Marcus wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves, in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. But nowhere can you retreat more peacefully or more quietly than into your own soul." That's the final reminder. You are not lacking peace because the world is broken. You are lacking peace because you've forgotten where to look for it. Not outside, not later, but here, now, within. You don't have to change your life to find stillness. You just have to stop avoiding yourself. And in that space, between one breath and the next, you'll find what Marcus found: clarity, focus, freedom, peace. That's what awaits you when you embrace the stillness. If these Stoic quotes helped you find peace in your loneliness, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. More Stoic wisdom is on the way, and leave a dot so I know you are here.